Yes!
If you're a Destiny player and or a veteran Destiny player, your brain probably makes multiple correlations to Destiny when you hear the phrase RNG or random number generator, even if the topic has nothing to do with Destiny. You see, it's safe to say that RNG itself has had so much jurisdiction of most, if not everything in the Destiny games. It's basically a part of the culture of the games. And when you really think about it, it's incredibly odd how something that us as Destiny players have zero control over has dictated so many factors in both titles in the franchise. I suppose that we've grown accustomed to not having control over the perks that our weapons roll with, exotic drop rates, and other various things that nobody has ever really realized. And when you think about it, it's kind of sad that Destiny 2 is missing a huge freedom of choice factor for certain things of the game. And over the course of this video, I discuss certain aspects that I hope will find their way into the game, alongside certain things that we might see in Shadowkeep. So without further ado, let's get it in. One thing that everybody can agree with is the fact that both Destiny games have never done the best job at rewarding players for the amount of time they've invested into the games. In Destiny 1, you could have been a day one player who grinded every day for hours and hours on end and never got the coveted Gjallarhorn. But your rookie friend who just started playing the game last week gets that same weapon as their first exotic drop. In Destiny 2, you probably ran the last wish raid millions of times and never got the 1,000 voices. But your friend who completes the raid for the first time gets the 1,000 voices. As stated previously, RNG dictates everything, and as Destiny players, we're fully aware that we can grind the same activity over and over and never get what we're going for. I hope that there comes a point in time in the game where we have a bit more choice over certain aspects of our weapon drops. And no, I'm not asking for Destiny to introduce a build a god roll generator. Bungie learned their lessons from back in Destiny 1's House of Wolves era when we were allowed to freely re-roll our weapon perks at the gunsmith. What if there was something in the game that allowed us to change the sights, barrels, and magazine perks for our weapons, and the only thing that would be randomly rolled would be the weapons 2 trait perks? I don't want to say too much about the masterwork attribute because that was somewhat conflict with the system created by the Menagerie. However, a few months back, I thought of a clever way that masterwork re-rolling could work in Destiny 2. So if you're interested in hearing my proposal, I have a link provided in the description box. But back to it. I was just thinking that we should be given more freedom over the characteristics of our weapons, because in Shadowkeep, it's looking like Bungie is raising the bar in regards to armor customization. Transmog, which is one of the most requested features, is finally making its way into the game in Season 8, and it's been talked about since the earliest days of Destiny 1. From what I've seen, perks on legendary armor will be completely customizable to suit the needs and playstyle of each player. I don't want to be that guy to ask for quote-unquote realism in a science fiction game, but it would be nice if we could choose the sights, barrels, and magazine perks on our weapons. But let's compare Destiny to other games and to real life to some extent. It's possible in almost everywhere but Destiny to change the scope and or sights of your weapon to benefit the situation. If I wanted a long range scope to be able to engage enemies from a distance, I should have that luxury instead of being forced to choose between 2 or 3 different options. What if I want to change around my weapon's barrels to enhance its most notable qualities? I can tell you now, when I get a hand cannon that doesn't roll extended barrel, hammer forged and accurized rounds, a lot of power and viability potential for that weapon is lost. A Dust Rot Blues that doesn't have full choke, a rifle barrel, and accurized rounds would usually be instantly dismantled. I've managed to drop the Spare Rations hand cannon multiple times over and over, but every time I get it, I never get range-based barrels because RNG gets the ingenious idea that chamber compensator and arrowhead break are beneficial for a weapon that relies heavily on the range stat. I eventually gave up on grinding for an amazingly rolled Spare Rations because I always get stability perks instead of something that focuses on range. As stated previously, RNG dictates all of this, and you're stuck with what you're given until you manage to get a better roll version of that same weapon or something similar. I mean, let's be real here. When it comes to the perks and the sights, barrels, and magazine slots, there's probably 1 or 2 of those perks that everybody goes for because those 1 or 2 perks are leaps and bounds better than everything else. And everything else pales in comparison because they just don't do enough. Let's take a look at this weapon, for example. This is an outstringer that I was incredibly lucky to get, and I'm super happy with what it rolled with. Going back to the conversation of Destiny not rewarding players for their time invested, it would upset a lot of people after finding out that I obtained this outstringer the second time that I ran the Menagerie. I didn't power grind until my thumbs fell off or anything. In fact, I had no idea that I'd get this roll or anything half as good as this. But I'm certain that there are millions of other players out there who spend countless hours in the Menagerie trying to get a roll similar to this one and still haven't. And just like what happened to me and all of the terribly rolled Spare Rations that I got, I'm pretty sure that everybody playing the Menagerie trying to get a nicely rolled outstringer is probably getting amazing perks in the trait slots, but in the magazine and barrel slots, they get nothing but crap. In the barrel slot, my outstringer rolled with corkscrew rifling and extended barrel, and aside from those 2 perks, I could have gotten any other combination of 2 perks out of a pool of 9. And aside from extended barrel and corkscrew rifling, there are only 3 of these other perks that increase the range stat, which is exactly what you want on a hand cannon. For the magazine slot, I was fortunate enough to get accurized rounds, which outshines every other perk in this slot because it's the only magazine perk that Outstringer can roll that increases range. High caliber rounds and steady rounds are also amazing, but Outstringer can't roll either one of these. So if I didn't have accurized rounds, I'd be missing out on a decent chunk of a range bonus. And when you look at a side-by-side comparison of the stat bonuses granted by sights versus the stat bonuses granted by barrels, you'd agree that the sight perks have it a lot worse. Better Devils is a 140 RPM hand cannon with sights, while Outstringer's in the same archetype but has barrels instead. Both of these weapons could have accurized rounds and a range masterwork, and Outstringer would still have a sizable amount of range more than Better Devils. Better Devils does have 5 less base range than the Outstringer, and you would think that Better Devils range would be a bit more on par with that of the Outstringer if you rolled one with the sight that increases the Better Devil's range stat the most, which is Sure Shot. And you would be wrong if you did think that, because Sure Shot grants a plus 10 to range, but you also lose 10 points of handling and stability. Outstringer's best perk for range is Full Bore, which grants 15 points of range, but you lose 10 points of stability and 5 points of handling. Not sure why sights have lesser stat increases, but it's almost frustrating when you really think about it. So to mitigate the frustration factor of rolling perks on a weapon that doesn't benefit the nature of the weapon itself, even after grinding the same activity over and over, and thinking that RNGs will eventually notice that you put in a lot of time, because time invested will never matter in Destiny. What if all sights, magazines, and barrels were in the form of mods? If you roll the spare rations with arrowhead, break, and drop mag, no problem. Just take your weapon to the gunsmith and have him change your weapon's attributes, except for the 2 trait perks, of course, to your liking. Of course, these mods shouldn't just be handed over either. There should be something in the game that enables us to work for the particular barrel, sight, and magazine mods that we seek, even if it's a painstaking grind. Because let's be honest here, we'd all rather do things this way instead of blindly grinding for something that we might not ever get. We learn how forgiving this can be from the Black Armory Forges. You may not have control over what masterwork your weapon will have like you can in the Menagerie, but when you pick up a pulse rifle frame from Ada, you know it's gonna be a blast furnace. When you get a hand cannon frame from her, you know it's gonna be the Kindle Orchid. And I use the Menagerie and the Black Armory Forges as an example because both of these activities set a precedent for what makes grinding feel like less of a chore and more of a reward. And if we had this aspect of intentionality dispersed into other activities in the game, RNG would have less of a connotation to the Destiny franchise. Alright, that does it for this one, everybody. In the comment section, tell me how RNG has treated you in the past, as well as your luck with getting nicely rolled weapons. If you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor and thumb wrestle that like button until it turns blue. And if you're new to my neck of the woods, go ahead and backhand slap that subscribe button and click that bell icon to never miss out on the most elite gaming content. But with that being stated, 1LHD is over and out. Y'all take it easy.
All of you to stop what you're doing and listen.